They did it! They actually did it! Disney's Snow White remake has just been released, and somehow it's even worse than we expected. Not just a bad movie, this thing was doomed from the start. Every decision, every PR move, every attempt to modernize the story has backfired spectacularly. But here's the real kicker. The movie itself isn't even the biggest problem. The real disaster, the way Disney completely fumbled everything leading up to its release. Look, I don't need every remake to be a carbon copy of the original, but if you are going to drastically change a story, at least make sure the new version is good. This one is a total downgrade. The 1937 Snow White had charm, warmth, and iconic music. This one has none of that. They removed the classic romance, sidelined the prince, made Snow White a leader in the most generic way possible, and somehow managed to strip away all the magic in the process. Rachel Zegler's Snow White feels oddly disconnected from the fairy tale world around her. Instead of being a character we root for, she comes across as, kind of a smug. It's not entirely her fault. The script is just that bad. And the 7 dwarfs, wow, what a disaster. First, Disney tried replacing them with magical creatures that barely resembled the originals. Then after massive backlash, they scrambled to backtrack by making them CGI instead. But by that point, they had already aligned everyone. The whole situation is just a perfect example of how this film was made. Not with a clear creative vision, but as a desperate attempt to avoid upsetting anyone, which ironically made it even worse.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that
she's not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming.
But what the hell, boy? Hey, disconnected.
Need backup.
That she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Yes.
Now let's talk about how Disney managed to turn Snow White into one of the most hated movies of the year before anyone even saw it. First, there was the backlash over Rachel Zegler's casting. Was it really that big of deal that Snow White wasn't played by a fair-skinned actress? Well, not really. It's a fantasy story, and honestly the representation isn't the biggest problem here, but Zegler herself made it a problem. Instead of accepting the role and making people excited about the film, she spent interviews talking about the original, calling it outdated, and saying Snow White will no longer be saved by the prince. And sure, wanting a more modern take is fine, But why act like the original was something to be embarrassed about? That just alienates the people who actually care about this movie. It's like signing up to be Batman and then saying you hate superheroes. Of course, because this is a Disney remake, the whole woke debate exploded. Every time they try to modernize a classic, people argue about whether they are ruining it. And honestly, the issue isn't that change was bad. A more diverse cast, cool. A Snow White that's more than just a damsel in distress, that could work. The problem is that these changes didn't feel organic. They felt like corporate box checking. They are not telling better stories, they're just making surface level updates to avoid controversy. Instead of strong female leads with depth and nouns, we get characters that feel like AI generated girl boss templates. Instead of well thought out diversity, we get awkward changes that feel more like PR stunts than real progress. It's not that people hate modernized stories, it's that they hate feeling like they are being lectured instead of entertained. And that's exactly what happened with Snow White. So, is the Snow White hate justified? Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. Disney's handling of this film, from the casting controversy to the marketing to the last minute changes, has been a disaster. But at the same time, some of the backlashes feels overblown. The issue isn't that they are modernizing the story, it's that they are doing it in a way that feels artificial and forced. At the end of the day, a remake should do two things: respect what made the original great while bringing something genuinely fresh to the table. But Snow White fails on both counts. Instead of telling a great story, Disney spent more time worrying about optics, and the end result is a film that no one, neither old fans nor new ones, actually wants.